How do you trigger a Chinese person? Well, one of the easiest ways is to call them a racial slur. There's one for almost every major ethnic groups out there. In the West, chink is quite common.
Chink.
What?
Now call someone from China this though, and they'll most likely not know what you're talking about. However, if you do decide you want to insult a local, there's one word that will almost guarantee you that effect. That word is 支那 in Chinese, or 西那 in Japanese. Now, why do I mention the Japanese pronunciation? You see in a minute. These screenshots come from a Hong Kong internet forum called LIHKG. The site was particularly active during the city's protests in 2019. So what do people talk about there? Well, think of it as a place for radicals to vent their anger against the police, Carrie Lam's government, the Communist Party of China, and sometimes the Chinese mainland as a whole. And this is where you see this word being hurled the most. So where did the word 支那 or 西那 come from? At first glance, it looks quite similar to the word China, right? 西那, Jina, China. And that's because they've been the same thing for a long time. This word came about in very ancient times and was carried along the Silk Road all the way to Europe. And that's why many European countries call China, China, or a slight variation of it. But there was one version from centuries later that was turned into a slur. And that version came from Japan. In the early 1900s, Japan was gearing up to invade China. More and more Japanese rejected using the traditional names for China, which had carried historical esteem, and started using Shina, a word borrowed from European languages to refer to China, and actively associated a sense of ethnic inferiority with the word. Now here's an example. In the early 1900s, many Chinese politicians and scholars used the word 支那 or 西那 themselves, as it was considered neutral. But in just a few years' time, writer Yu Dafu wrote this line in his 1921 novel, Sinking. The Japanese called us Shinajin. This is worse than calling someone a low-life thief. Shina had become a full-blown derogatory term. Eventually, such a negative mindset towards the Chinese allowed the Japanese government to gain enough domestic support to launch a full-scale invasion of China in the 1930s. The 8-year Second Sino-Japanese War was one of the darkest chapters of Chinese history and a forever source of historical pain for China. In Hong Kong, you can still find these old Japanese military pillboxes that were built after they ransacked the city in the 1940s. This is a copy of Japan's wartime propaganda magazine. Interlaced with glorified photos of Japanese soldiers carrying guns and bayonets showing off their advancements on Chinese soil are the word Shina. After World War II ended, Japan's government made a conscious decision to stop using the word Shina in all official circumstances because of its connotation. And this is why, to the people here in China, the word China is okay, but Shina is not. For a time, many thought the word Shina would become a relic of the past, but apparently it is not. See, a political and cultural wedge between Hong Kong and the mainland had existed long before the 2019 protest, and it's not the first time that mainlanders and Hong Kongers have called each other's bad names. But none of those words carries the same connotation as 支那. Not only is it deemed strongly offensive to the Chinese, but the word's original targets of derogation also covers people from Hong Kong. Now here's my take. Some radical separatists are well aware of the implications of using this word. It is a conscious choice, a symbolic gesture to disassociate themselves from the Chinese identity. Can you be racist against your own ethnicity? To some people, it seems like you can, if you no longer consider yourself a part of it.